I noticed that the candle behind me, the new candle, is a red candle. If you look at the Advent wreath that we typically use, it's usually a pink candle for the candle of joy on the third Sunday. I like red for this candle because joy for me is a very vibrant space in life, which gives much of the energy. It's not a subdued emotion, feeling, sense of being. It's deeper and richer than most pinks, so that's why I used red. And it's fuller and brighter than the winter or the opposition that we happen to be in. And so that to me is what we're talking about today. How do we add the vibrancy to life?
And it also is red for Ed, Jim.
Red for Ed, that's right.
I know you and your family. Hi, Judy.
Yeah. And so I look at the scripture that the booklet told us about, and it's called the Magnificat. It is Mary as she gets the announcement about stuff and has to decide what to do next, right? And when I get to this time of year, I always think about that girl, probably 12 to 14 years old, just starting out into the beginnings of adult life, what this must have been like for her, right? How does she begin to make sense of an unwanted pregnancy, a life where she's not married yet, doesn't have financial security? How, and I think about all the other issues around that. How does she find joy in the midst of that? And yet her words say, my soul magnifies the Lord and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed. How do you, in the midst of not perfect, continue to speak the words of blessing to yourself, if not to the world? That's kind of what joy is. Go ahead. How do you find joy in the midst of COVID? I guess is part of what I'm asking.
Well, I think it's in the small ways these days, and random acts or unexpected acts of kindness. I shared some stuff I got with a friend of mine down the street, and she gave me a mug that was, when she had seen it in a store, has a little passage from Psalms, and I was quite overcome that she had thought of me when she saw it, because it relates to song, and she knows I sing. So that was one thing, and my neighbor brought me really good cranberry bars yesterday, and I gave him some apples in return. So I think it's like little things that are reminders that we are one, we're connected, we're a part of each other in spite of everything else that's going on. Just listen.
And thank you for bringing up Psalms, because in a very real way, that's the model that Maya Angelou is using in our primary poem today. I don't know how much you've been connected to a congregation of color, right? I was in Epworth, and I was reminded this last week about that, where I was the pastor of our Hispanic congregation as well as our English congregation. And these were Hispanics who were not anywhere close to the top end of the pay scale, right? These are people who were struggling daily for life. Some of them uncertain of their their status as opposition to them continued. But you know what their favorite strand of scripture were Psalms. They used those on a regular basis. And many of those Psalms were laments, right? Things are not perfect type of writings. And yet they loved them because they also spoke in the midst of the lament something more. I think I've told you my favorite Psalm, haven't I? Psalm 22. Do you know that Psalm?
No.
Did you start it?
It starts with the words that Jesus said on the cross in the midst of his trial. And it says, my God, why have you forsaken me? People see that as a moment of doubt. I see it as a moment of where he was trying to lament and find hope, find joy in the midst of a difficult time. Here's how it goes, just so you know. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night and find no rest. There's been times of my life that I've been in that space. How about you?
Yeah.
Maybe not on a cross, but it kind of felt like it sometimes. And then it goes to the second side of what this psalm is about. And this psalm goes back and forth between these two sides. The second part goes, yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm. See, he drops back into the lament. But I am a worm and not human, scorned by others and despised by the people. All who see me mock at me. They make mouths at me. They shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights. But then he goes, yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe. Do you see that? He's trying to, in the midst of whatever he's going through, still hold the truths of what stuff tells him. Because in the midst of going through, that stuff is maybe all that keeps us going, but it's hard to hold on to, isn't it?
Mm.
And Maya Angelou, of course, an American Black woman, has that same type of history where she's having to speak out of what can only be called a horrendous, dark, difficult pathway behind her, and trying to figure out how does she not just carry herself towards a future, but those around her. How does she make it so that we can find a way out? And so that's what her poem today, which is called Just Like Job. If you know the story of Job, everything goes wrong. Everything goes as wrong as it can possibly go. And yet he is one of the most faith-filled and faithful people in all of Scripture. How? And that's why somebody like Maya Angelou, who is sitting in a space where faith beyond the present moment is needed, sees him as a good example. So this is what it says. My Lord, long have I cried out to thee. In the heat of the sun, the cool of the moon, my screams searched the heavens for thee. My God, when my blanket was nothing but dew, rags and bones were all I owned, I chanted your name, just like Job. Father, my life give I gladly to thee. Deep rivers ahead, high mountains above. My soul wants only your love, but fear gathers round like wolves in the dark. Don't you love that line? Fear gathers round like wolves in the dark. Have you forgotten my name? O Lord, come to your child. O Lord, forget me not. You said to lean on your arms, and I am leaning. You said to trust in your love, and I am trusting. You said to call on your name, and I am calling. I'm stepping out on your word. You said you'd be my protection, my only and glorious Savior, my beautiful rose of Sharon, and I'm stepping out on your word. Joy, joy, your word, joy, joy, the wonderful word of the Son of God. You said that you would take me to glory, to sit down at the welcome table, rejoice with my mother in heaven, and I'm stepping out on your word into the alleys, into the byways, into the streets and the roads and the highways, past rumor mongers and midnight ramblers, past the liars and the cheaters and the gamblers, on your word, on your word, on the wonderful word of the Son of God. I'm stepping out on your word. It's about trusting something beyond the moment. And we've all done that. You know, part of the only reason why we got out of our childhood is because we trusted in somebody beyond ourselves, right? And usually lots of people. And they, as a typical rule, mostly held us up in some way or another, right? So where did you find glimmers of joy in the midst of whatever you were going through?
I guess for me, it's like a process. And I have to realize that I'm in the pits. I mean, I have to get that I'm in a position where I'm not happy, I'm angry, I'm whatever it is, and make a decision that isn't where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I decide that's exactly where I want to be for a while, but when I decide this isn't where I want to be, then I have to do some work. And for me, it involves doing what's suggested in the Course in Miracles, which is to decide the kind of day that I want to have. Where do I want to be in my life right now? And in order to get there, am I able to make decisions for myself to get me there? And the answer is no, I don't know the way to get there. I have to depend upon the Holy Spirit to give my directions and guidance. And so I ask for help and I pray and meditate for that, because I really don't know what's in my best interest. I know what I want, but that's not necessarily what's the best thing for me. And so I have to turn that over to some other power to help guide me in that decision, and ask what I should do. And so then I just sit with it. And sometimes I have an answer right away and sometimes I don't, but then I say, okay, I'm going to go about my day and I'm going to keep asking, help me guide me in the decisions here. And I've always had success. I've always had an answer that's peaceful and gentle. I'd made a decision about a divorce that way. And I kept, every time it would pop in my mind, the questions, turn it over to you, God. I've given it to you. I'm not obsessing about this anymore. I'm tired. I don't want to think about it. And then I know at some point there comes a time and I just have the answer. And it's a joyful answer. And I can live my life at peace then. And without that fear and angst and, upset, constant upset.
And
So
Elizabeth, in that process, do you ever fall prey to the same thing I do? I'm waiting for your answer, and as soon as you give the same one I want anyway.
well, that's the whole problem. See,
That's the hard part, isn't it?
that's the thing. I have made my decisions that got me into this issue, wherever it is that I'm worried about. I made those decisions thinking that was what was in my best interest to get, and then I'm into this mire.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have to come to a place where I know that I'm not a good decision maker for my best interests, that only the Holy Spirit God is.
Yeah.
And so I have to keep turning that back over and saying, hey, I'm not good at this. I've made a lot of bad decisions in the past. And so help me through this one. And I always get it. And it's always peaceful.
Yeah.
And then it's gone. That issue is done with. I was saying before we started, I've made a decision that I am going to go to Boise, Idaho, to be with my family for Christmas. And I struggled with this decision. I have some really good friends who really don't want me to go. And I know that. And I just, I had to make a decision the way I know how to make it, which is this way. And I have been at peace and joyful, and I have not had fear since that time.
Mhm.
And that's been about 4 days now, 5 days.
Nice.
Yeah.
You used a word that's really interesting, mire, right? John Bunyan used that word in his book, Pilgrim's Progress,
Mhm.
right? And he talks about different characters, and one of the characters is who he calls the muck raker, who's stuck in the mire, and his job is literally to rake the muck to try to rid the world of some of that muck. And he's so busy raking the muck, so busy in his mire job, that he doesn't notice the angel over his shoulder whispering that it's time for him to be taken up too.
Yeah.
And you're right that much of our processes keep us stuck in one space, and it's not because it's a bad space, but it's maybe not where the Spirit is drawing us. And joy, hopefully, is that which helps us to see beyond just this, to see a different path than that. And it's an opening up to a different possibility than what's right before us in the moment. How about the rest of you?
What's getting me through at the moment is Zoom.
Uh-huh.
And I'm actually more connected than I've been in a long time since I've been on Zoom, because I'm immunocompromised. I can't be around people that much anyway. And I really have missed my St. Francis life. So this has connected me with the church and the people, with the people in the church, which is what the church is, more than I have been in a long time. And then on Tuesday nights, I do a class with a church in Phoenix that I've been doing classes with this whole time. And it's a spiritual journey exploration. Right now we're doing mystics. And I am so profoundly affected by this group. They are an amazing group. And it's led me to want to explore even more deeply some areas that I haven't studied before. And just being able to connect with people. And like every day I'm in pain, it's just a matter of how much pain.
Yeah.
And it's like today the pain is fairly extreme, but I could still be on here because I could sit at my couch.
Mm.
I don't have to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Put my iPad in my lap. It doesn't matter how I feel. Even if I don't want to talk, I could just listen and be connected.
Right.
But I'm even able to talk and just be with you all. And that's such a blessing to me. In so many ways. And there's so much, I'm always connected on the internet anyway, because there's so much online. I take classes all over universities all over the world online. I love that. It's like, no matter how bad I feel, I've got my brain still, and I'm able to explore so many areas. And that keeps me feeling sane and whole. And I'm just so curious about this world. So that keeps me going.
The hard part about, because I agree with everything you said, Judy, the hard part that gets in the way of that is, well, two things. Our right answers, right? Like with the church, we already had the right way to do church. We didn't have to think about those few people who maybe needed to connect differently. And so we never pursued that. And second of all, whatever kind of way that I don't trust the other. And those two things work as roadblocks to being able to see beyond that. And so I'm, in many ways, I'm very thankful to COVID for forcing us to have to look down roads, develop practices that we just weren't. So thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and Soul Connection on Mondays is also one of the, I mean, they were just going to do it for the month of August, and now we're keep going.
Yeah.
And that is like so precious to me.
That's right. And we could feel just forced into it, but the reality is maybe it was an invitation, right?
Yeah.
So thank you all for doing this.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for sharing,
sharing,
Judy.
Judy. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you.
much. I appreciate that.
John, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, a moment ago, you set up an opposition thoughts, the positive side, and then something, and then you said, and then there's not trusting. And
Yeah.
I don't know in what you meant. You know, we have that. I don't, could you explain that a little more?
Sure. If I have right answers that I hold too firmly, then I surely don't go towards some dark place that I don't trust, some person who is less knowledgeable than me, right? And so however you're wrong and however I'm right, often work in parallel and block my view ahead and stop me from looking at anything else.
Oh, I
And
see.
you might be very wrong, John. I'm not trying to say excuse me, you might be very wrong. I'm not trying to say you're right. But what I'm saying is that if I hold you always as wrong and I never look towards you, then I never have the glimmer of something more, something that could be there.
And I'd see it a little bit differently, John. If I have an answer, if I'm in a bad place and I have an answer and I've been doing my answer and making that decision, I'm right. And I'm not going to be trusting in the Holy Spirit or God
That's
to
right.
give me direction. I'm not going to be willing to walk down that road and say, I can't do this. Please help me,
Yeah.
guide me, give me an answer that that is right for me. And I give up my need to be right.
That's right. And at least part of that other right is somebody who is some voice that I haven't listened to before. Could absolutely be the voice that I distrusted, maybe with good reason why I distrusted that voice. But it doesn't mean that in this case, that voice is not absolutely the Spirit drawing me down another road.
Okay,
I think
thanks.
that's why I always consider it a journey and not an end place. Like
Yeah.
the more I learn I need to learn. So to me, it's not an end place I reach. It's some place I'm always reaching for.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about other people and how they live their lives and stuff. So, it's like I know I have a couple of Trump supporters in the complex here, but they're always kind to me on a personal level and always genuinely caring and offer to do things for me. We relate on a level, we just don't talk politics.
Right.
But, it's like we're able to still love each other and care for each other. So to me, it's more about a journey than just always being right or wrong.
Sure.
There isn't, that's a really absolute kind of a thing.
But why is it that somebody like that, whatever the oppositional space is, why is it that they take away our joy? It's because we're so aware of their opposition. We're still so aware of their wrongness, their difficulties, the obstacles they're placing in our path, that we don't see what else is true about them. And that other part that's true about them is where joy lies. That they can bring me joy, even though there's X amount of them that is not acceptable to me, right? There is this piece that is. And do we search for that in each other? And do we nourish that in each other? And it's a challenge, isn't it?
I wonder how much of this discussion centers around our wondering who we are too. So that if we put ourselves in a position where we say, I believe this, and therefore somebody who believes the opposite of this, we will be in opposition to each other just immediately. Maybe the deeper issue is my examining who I am in this process, and also whether I'm making any growth, whether I'm just staying who I am, who I have defined myself. And therein lies an element of trust too,
Right.
because if I question who I am in terms of how I have defined myself, then that leaves open a door for me to know who I am.
You know, my basic definition of joy, as opposed to happiness, which is akin, is this. Happiness is that which something goes on, something happens to you, and so it gives you a good feeling. Joy is that good feeling without something having happened. Right? It's a choice, and it's a decision to see beyond just the immediate of this moment, that there is something more than just that. That's why at death, for example, which is not a happy time, there are people that have great joy during that time. We were talking about Robbie's service. Robbie's service was a joyful experience, not because it was a happy experience, but because of a longer view of life, both that she gave us and that we developed because of her.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
But
Yeah, I see joy as something that bubbles up from within. It's an inside job, and it's there to be experienced whenever we can get rid of the monkey brain stuff in our heads.
that's right.
My head.
But we sometimes have to go through the process, excuse me, of that psalm that I read, where this is happening, but this is also true. And we have to remind ourselves of the this is also true in the midst of what's happening.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much black and white, yes, right and wrong. But a friend taught me years ago that that the best way to look at things was both and. So especially with something like grief and death in this period of time we're going through, especially with grief, it's the joy of having known someone and having loved them enough to feel sad that they're not there. I mean, you can't have one without the other, that old song. But when I look at most things, that's true. The struggles are both for my learning and for my struggling, and they're both important. But I can also call my brother, and he's 1.5 years younger than I am, which used to matter, and I used to flaunt that. I've been a big sister all my life, so but I can call him, and we'll end up laughing uproariously about the most inane things, but it's because we had so much love between us for so long that it's easy to just relax and let that bubble up, as Liz said. Just let it happen.
I love that philosophy of getting rid of the word but. It's and.
Yeah.
Because exactly what you're saying, Judy. I learned that a long time ago, also from a friend and an experience, and I try to remember it because it makes a huge difference. If I find myself saying this is true, but then I've already lost it. I see this is true, and
Yeah.
this other option is.
I had another friend that said everything after but is bullshit.
Which may be very true, Judy.
I like that.
That kind of stops me too. When I'm writing something or so on, I recognize when I get to a but. Oh, it's
There
true.
it is.
This is gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The issue with joy, I remember one time in our journey brought that up, and I said, Jenna's ears. And the leader of the group said, Jenna's ears? And I said, yeah, our granddaughter. And I look at her ears, I feel joy. Because something about that just embodies for me the essence of Jenna. So and she's doing nothing. She's sitting there. She has this wonderful set of ears that I love and that bring me joy because I get to look at them.
Yeah.
And I think, something like that is kind of indicative of where, as you say, Elizabeth, it bubbles up from within you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In the introduction, the author of our booklet said, even the greatest faith or hope or peace or love, if it lacks a sense of joy, it is not yet fully alive.
Yeah.
And so joy is what gives the vibrancy, the aliveness to the moment, good or bad, right? Because even in the darkest moments, having that joy can still give vibrancy to that moment.
I like that. I like that.
Right? It's not just knowing, it's living in that space of, right? So how do we get there? She one of her suggestions was about making a list of what you're grateful for and adding to it, right? It's that intentional trying to see something, trying to sing a Christmas carol in the midst of maybe not quite joyful moment, right? Because like with that 14-year-old Mary, it wasn't that it was an easy road ahead. It's that she chose it beyond just the difficulties to what else it would bring. Did anyone read the other poem by Denise
Bill
Levertov?
Iros. Yeah.
It's an amazing poem. It's called Annunciation. And it says something like this. We know the scene, the room, variously furnished, almost always a lectern, a book, always the tall lily, arrived on solemn grandeur of great wings, the angelic ambassador standing or hovering, whom she acknowledges, a guest. But we are told of meek obedience. No one mentions courage. The engendering spirit did not enter her without consent. God waited. She was free to accept or to refuse, choice integral to humanness. And that this annunciation, this proclaiming by God that this is what's going to happen to you, happened because she chose to open herself up to both the pain of what would be there, as all births are to some degree, right? You have to go through that birthing process and the difficulty of it, because she chose to see something beyond just that.
Mm-hmm.
What was the joy that she held on to? Why did she say yes? Because she saw something more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no doubt that this last year has felt like a birthing canal without the light at the end of the tunnel yet.
It felt like labor.
Yeah, it felt like labor,
Yes,
didn't
been
it?
like labor.
Yeah. And the question is, what do we birth out of it? Or are we trying to crawl back into the womb and not move?
A bit of both.
Probably a bit of both.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, when the water breaks, you know it's
That's
gonna
it.
happen.
And,
For real, there is no going back.
right.
That's right.
And in a very real way, that's exactly always true, that you have to move towards what can be, but our fingers linger on whatever it is we want from the past. Right? But
Well,
joy,
that's why I think the the term leap of faith, because I don't know that you slowly walk into it, or that I think sometimes you just have to jump. and know that you'll be embraced, know that you can land, know that you can be held.
yeah. I have a good friend of mine named Ray who spoke a story. Oh my gosh, it's almost 25 years ago now, that changed my life. And he spoke about standing on a cliff and the difficulty of saying what next, how next. And he essentially said this: you have to jump off the cliff and build your wings as you fall. And we want always to kind of have our ducks in a row ahead of time. We want it all fixed. But at least part of what joy is that which gives us the buoyancy to continue building the wings, even though it looks like there's a long drop below us.
Well, coupled with what we've been discussing and talking about this time today is, again, if we want to plan everything out, and if we are assuming that we know or are aware of the outcome, we are shut off then at that point. So to remain open to a greater possibility than the one that we can imagine and know. And I think God provides surprises for us all the time. And that's how I experience God. I experience God in funny ways, but sometimes I don't think about angels leaving pennies, but I never fail to pick up pennies, and sometimes it's even a quarter. So, and I do remember, okay, I'm just recalling in that crazy little moment, that is my source of supply. It's a gentle reminder that, the things that I fret about and have a anxiety about is something I make up in my own mind. Simply that.
And you can choose. You get to choose.
You get to choose. One of the things that I like about this time of year is that as darkness descends, we put up lights. Whether they're candles like this or the little sparkly lights on our houses. And during this time of year, many traditions have done that. The menorah in the Jewish tradition is another example. What allows us to see beyond just this? To a very real way, this type of light is that which is expressive of joy, that there's something more than whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And do we continue to speak that in the midst of it? Do we continue to live as if that's true? We sing Christmas songs, which don't always feel true to our own situation, but they proclaim a situation beyond just this, that a birth is going to happen, right? Which one of the carols of this time of year gives you a vision, helps you beyond?
My Lord, what a morning.
That was a
Love
great, did everyone read that poem? Yeah. Yeah.
Love that.
And that whole song is about seeing something more, right?
Mhm.
Did I wake up this morning with it being God's glorious event? No, but I believe it's going to. Right? My Lord, what a morning. Yep. Go ahead, John.
I've always liked Good King Wenceslas.
Oh, yes. You sang that in church once, I think.
Yes.
I mean, by yourself. I think you sang it as a solo
Oh, my
many
gosh.
years ago. Yeah, no, it was great. It was a long time ago. It's all right. It's good.
And how many like a particular song because it reminds you of something that gives you strength, right? Reminds you of something that showed you a vision beyond just whatever, right? And we begin to hold on to that because remember when we sang this together and I knew something better, right? I remember when John sang that solo type of thing, right?
It was an atonal version.
It
all
was
right.
not. You did it well. With that deep, deep voice of yours, it was wonderful.
Every
See,
time
and you've
that-
even forgotten, so, but I remember.
Yeah, I have a memory.
but every time the trio, for example, sings the song Nothing But a Child, which they're going to do on Christmas Eve. And everyone knows we're going to do a live Christmas Eve service, 7 o'clock on
Is it
Christmas.
going to be Zoomed?
It is going to be on Zoom. We're gonna,
Okay.
and mostly it's so that we can be in a space together, right?
Mhm.
And so we're going to try to do that, and we'll tape it so people can watch it when they want to. If people want to stay up till midnight, they can stay up at midnight, and it'll hopefully be up there for them. But we're going to do that so we sing together. And one of the songs we're going to sing is Nothing But a Child. I love that song because back in early 90s, I stood with my trembling 12-year-old and we sang that together at church. Probably atonally, right? But when they sing that, it reminds me of both that 12-year-old who is growing up, not always perfectly, not always in the way that dad wanted, right? But it gives me a vision for his life, right?
There's a song that, Judy, I need to use your memory for songs that we always had Bill Roberts sing on Christmas Eve.
Sweet
Mary,
little
did you know?
No, it's Sweet Little Jesus Boy.
Sweet Old Jesus Boy.
And Anne would play the
piano.
auto harp.
Oh, was it auto harp? I couldn't remember. Whatever the two of them did it together. It was just
Well, she
wonderful.
played piano sometimes, but maybe sometimes he played the auto harp himself, accompany himself. But
Yeah.
those are rich times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
They bring tears.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that because I was a student getting my social work degree and I was blessed to have Bill Roberts as my mentor, one of my mentors.
Yeah.
Nice.
You were blessed.
Oh my gosh. He was so wonderful. And I thought if I could ever be a social worker like he, if I could, he just was so warm, so loving, so kind, so patient, so everything.
Yeah.
And I thank you for reminding me because I don't think about him all the time. And I knew Anne, but not as well. But my memory is, I think I went over there one time or something, but I, of course, interacted with him in the student teacher role and just the graciousness of them as a couple. But I learned so much from him. I just was like a sponge.
It sounds like, Jim, we need to find a picture of Bill Roberts for the angel wall.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that would be
Yeah,
marvelous.
That would be great.
Bill was,
Everyone look and see if you can.
Yeah.
Bill was a colleague of mine in the Department of Family Medicine when I was faculty here. And so I also knew him.
Oh my God, I know you.
Now you've got that part of me, huh?
Yeah.
So now I can see you and, oh, you were just marvelous too, and you still are. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling like I'm having an old home week here. Oh.
Part of what I see you dealing with, Catherine, is sometimes you don't know who all your angels are.
Yeah.
You hear
Oh,
she's
that
been
is for
using
sure.
some voice from your past that gave you something.
Ah, that's, you know how many years ago I got my master's degree in 1984. So that's really, really a long time ago.
Yeah.
And
That is certainly when I was in the Department of Family Medicine and was an aid stock at the beginning of the epidemic.
yes, with
Sure.
Dr. I helped with that, and I really learned so much from everyone there and all the doctors. And yes, I just remember you as cheerful, upbeat, joyful. You are joyful.
Oh,
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that. That's
We were
wonderful.
talking about Bill Roberts, not me.
Well, you know, everybody there were so many people, and I can't remember last names. And I remember Bernie, the little doctor, you know who I'm talking about. He was older. And Craig, and I can't think of Craig's last name. Was it McClure or something?
McClure, yeah, it's McClure.
And all the other people. And I mean, I just had so many people that gave me a piece of themselves. I guess that's a way to put it. And I was exposed to so many things that and Barbara, and she's still around. Dr. Barbara, she's involved with PSR, Physicians for Social Responsibility. I'm trying to think
Warren.
of her. Huh?
Warren,
Yes,
Warren.
I was in the family practice office. I was down in the basement because that's where you guys stuck me. And so I didn't have to come out of a closet. I had to come up from the basement. And I used to see patients in exam rooms because they couldn't get down the stairs.
Yeah.
So it's funny
Thank
to think of.
you, both of you. Yeah. Great
Wow.
to see that dynamic between you and all that history and wonderful work.
Well, boy, what a jump back into the past. And thank you all for listening, but
Yeah.
I'm just kind of overwhelmed.
Here's
Add it
what
to
I
your
thought.
gratitude list.
Yeah. Gratitude
Add
list.
it to your gratitude list. That's
19
exactly right.
1985 is the year my husband died. And the
Ah.
St. Francis community was just there for me, and particularly Bill and Ann Roberts.
Yeah.
They were very much there for my whole family. So yes, that was a traumatic year for me in 1985.
Indeed.
As
And
you
the
were
family
speaking,
medicine department was also very, very special and there for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
as you were speaking, Catherine, I kept thinking of that saying which said, "You may not remember what they said, but you always remember the way they made you feel." Right?
Mhm.
And I think that at least part of that is what joy is it's that deep
Mm.
feeling, that thing from within that says, this is something I want to perpetuate in myself and in the world. And so it's not as important who we remember, it's that we remember how to perpetuate who they were. I
Mhm.
never met Bill Roberts, for example, but I met him through Anne.
Uh-huh.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I got to be with Anne the last year or so of her life, and got to see the wonder of who he was, and got to hold on to that strand of life, of power that he was. And
Mhm.
so he is part of my joy, even though I have no personal connection to him, only to his wife and to those of the rest of you who knew him.
Well, what you're saying is interesting, because I often say to people, we don't know when we go out into the world and we're just doing our thing. We really don't know. We don't know where the I'm trying to find the right words. I guess we don't know the impact of what we do, because it doesn't stop with one person. It doesn't stop with that primary encounter. It is carried on in multiple ways, and that's why I say to other people, you are more powerful than you realize, than you know. Than
And
you
we all
really
are.
Yeah, each of us is, and do we stop and really take that in and think about that?
One of my favorite expressions that has come up in the last couple of years is paying it forward.
Mhm.
And when I went with the St. Francis group to Peru, I met, it was Victor, Jim's friend Victor's nephew, because I think it was his sister's son, who'd been in a horrible motorcycle accident and had major problems with the shoulder that was not usable, his whole arm, and they had no money to pay for the surgery and physical therapy that was required. So I offered to help. And I don't want to brag about that, but I taught him. He was always worried about whether, and we've stayed in connection all of these years now, or all this time, but he always was worried about how to pay me back. And I taught him that expression of paying it forward. And that's really what we're talking about here, is the things that we've learned from others as we share in our future with other people, and sharing it in any way we can. And he loved that, as did his whole family, that whole new expression of paying it forward. And so someday he knows he will do something of that level for somebody else.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just the way in my mind to look at that.
Right.
And I think it could be in small ways too. It's like, I say hi to everybody I meet. And I like to, if time back in the day, it was like when I was able, it was like listening to people's stories. I can remember sitting in the floor of Target one time because this woman, we just started chatting over something in the store, and she started crying, and we sat down. She just told me this whole story is going on in her life. And it's like, if you aren't open to people in the first place, you never have those encounters. And it's like, I know a Chinese gentleman here, because we had some China, now we don't have so many, but until recently, we've had a lot of Chinese scholars in our complex. And I said hi to him one day. He goes, you're the only person who lives here from the United States who has said hi to me.
Mhm.
And I said, I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like, and just saying, having a conversation with a clerk when I buy groceries, even if it's in mask, it's like, I think sometimes we don't realize how powerful a positive presence can be to other people,
Oh, yeah.
and how you interface with people every day matters.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The-
So
the-
Jim, that guy's name is Josue.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
And he's now doing, when they needed repairs in the facility, he was painting with that arm. And
Nice.
I think they said he's even playing some volleyball or something. I mean, just amazing, because it was at least a couple of years in recovery for him, and more than one surgery.
Yeah. The difficulty of life is that it often gives us messages like Kate told about, taking away this arm's ability, or say something that makes us hear the no's of life, right? What can't happen. And joy is that which tells us that there's something more than that. And we can sit back there and say, you can't make me move, little 2-year-old kick our feet type of thing. But I like better what Maya Angelou draws us towards, and that is Still I Rise. So I'd like to end by just reading that poem, because that's such an
Yes.
amazing poem.
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, Just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Do you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes? Shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by your soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from the past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. That's in a phrase, I rise, is what joy is about.
Yeah.
Because who knows what all the next few months or years will bring to each one of us. But do we have something that gives us a buoyancy, forward looking in the midst of it? That's joy.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
your time
much.
today.
Thank you. See you all next week. Blessings, everyone.
Mwah.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.